Good day, viewers. I'm Yash Hari Dikshit. I'm an associate at the firm. Today, we are back with another episode of the Indian Lawyer Legal Tips. Today, we'll be breaking down the complex concept of Uniform Civil Code. Today, we have with us Ms. Sushila Ram Varma. She is an advocate and chief legal consultant of the firm. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you, Yash. I'm glad you chose a topic like the Uniform Civil Code. It is something that really requires discussion because I feel that it would bring parity and it would bring an equality amongst all the citizens, and it is something that should really be considered to be implemented at the earliest.
Ma'am, I'll start with a very basic question. What is Uniform Civil Code and where does it appear in our constitution?
Well, the Uniform Civil Code, or UCC as it is referred to as an acronym, refers to a single set of civil laws that would govern all Indian citizens equally, regardless of their religion, caste, or gender, in matters of personal law like marriage, divorce, inheritance, adoption, and succession. It is enshrined in the Constitution of India, but it finds a mention in the Directive Principles of the Constitution, that is, Directive Principles of State Policy. And it is enshrined in Article 44, which very clearly says that the state shall endeavor to secure for the citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. However, since it is a directive principle, it is not the same as a fundamental right. It is therefore non justiciable, which means that it cannot be enforced in a court of law. But it represents a constitutional ideal, an aspiration or a goal for the Indian legal system, which to my mind is extremely important.
Definitely, ma'am. What is the origin of this idea? Was it there during independence or did it emerge later?
Actually, Yash, this finds its origins as early as 1840 in the Lex Loci report of 1840, which was there during the times of British rule. Now, the British, when they came and they controlled India or they ruled India, they found that there were several types of castes, communities, religions, sects, etc., and each one had their own laws, their own customs, and it became very confusing for the British because obviously in their country they had only one type of law which governed everybody. So they are the first ones who actually suggested that there should be a uniform civil law for India, and personal laws of different religious communities should not be there because it can cause social unrest. However, though they had this thought process, nothing really happened. In fact, even after independence, when the Constituent Assembly debates were held, there were several intense discussions on whether personal laws should be unified. Many members, especially from minority communities, feared that it would interfere with their religious practices. As a result, Article 1444 was inserted as a directive principle. However, it has a non binding obligation for or a direction for the future. But to my mind, Yash, most of the confusion always arises because people are not very well versed with exactly what the Uniform Civil Code says. And I think this endeavor that you have made today to try and bring the UCC to our viewers in a very simple and real manner is a good thing. So I think let me take your questions.
Absolutely, ma'am. That's fascinating what you mentioned. Even back then, there were concerns about balancing unity and diversity. Now, in 2024, Uttarakhand passed the Uniform Civil Code Bill.
Mhm.
And what do you think are the major arguments in favor of a nationwide implementation?
Well, before we go to the Uttarakhand, let me just pause a little and discuss our constitution. Now, our constitutional framework talks about secularism, which was introduced in the 42nd Constitutional Amendment in 1976, which means that the state must remain neutral in all religious matters. Now, in a secular country, civil rights such as marriage, divorce, or inheritance should ideally not depend on the individual's religion. The UCC would ensure that all citizens are treated equally, fairly, and under the same civil law, irrespective of their faith. In that sense, I feel that UCC complements fundamental rights like Article 14, which says equality before law, and Article 15, which says prohibition of discrimination, and helps a truly secular legal framework. Now, coming to your question regarding Uttarakhand, I would say it's an excellent step which Uttarakhand has taken by passing the UCC in 2024. There are many arguments which are always in favor of a particular legislation and many which are against. In my opinion, the positive arguments far overweigh the negative. Now, let us see what are some of the arguments that I feel would help. The first I would say is gender justice. Many personal laws continue to discriminate against women, and there are certain recent laws that even discriminate against men. Secondly, I feel that if there is a UCC, there would be simplification and clarity, and we would not have any parallel system of personal law based on religion, which always creates confusion, inconsistency, and doubt in the minds of people. Thirdly, I would say the judicial efficiency would increase phenomenally because there would be no overlapping laws. The court knows that they only have to deal with the matter under one particular law. Also, I feel that if you have a UCC, it brings about a national integration because a set of common civil laws would obviously foster a sense of unity and shared citizenship amongst the citizens of the country. And lastly, and probably a very important aspect, is the global human rights norms that would be followed if India starts implementing UCC in all the states. It would align with the egalitarian legal structure that all other countries are following, where there is only one law which deals with the personal laws of the citizens rather than having manifold laws and complicating the issue.
But ma'am, since it's a very sensitive subject, there must be some criticisms as well. Can you elaborate on that a little?
Certainly. I think primarily, in my opinion, most of the criticism always stems from ignorance. Now, while there is a saying that ignorance is bliss, believe me, in the legal world, ignorance can never be bliss. It causes more confusion, and we as practicing lawyers have seen time and again how it creates so much of confusion. So, in my opinion, when people are saying that if there is one UCC, there will be one religion will have the majority or dominant power over minorities, is absolutely incorrect. Because when you say uniform, it means it will apply uniformly across the nation. And in any event, Article 25 of the Constitution is very clear that everyone has the right to freely profess and practice one's religion. So nobody can take away the rights. So, like I said, it's always ignorance which is actually causing all these fears in the minds of people. And India's cultural diversity is so vast and so difficult to manage that it would be much easier if there was only one single law. I personally feel it's always politically motivated, and invariably it's the politicians who make it a sensitive issue when there is really no need to cause unrest amongst the citizens.
I absolutely agree with you, ma'am. You touched on gender justice earlier. I'd like to come back to it. How do you think uniform civil code can help advance women's rights?
Well, earlier, Yash, we noticed, I mean, it's a sad thing to say, but yes, it has always been like this. The Indian legal system has been patriarchal historically. And for years, women were dominated and controlled. Of course, today things have changed, and the Indian woman is much stronger, and feminism is the order of the day. So much so that now women are even misusing the laws that are there for their personal laws. And there are many instances where we notice that women have misused the law to their advantage. And I would say that actually it's not very fair. But the bottom line is that yes, UCC will definitely help to advance women's rights, because now you would have only one single law which would apply to everybody. Earlier, historically, since the laws were patriarchal in nature and favored the man, we saw instances of many cases like the Supreme Court's intervention to ban triple talaq in Sharia Bano versus Union of India in 2017. Then there is this amendment of the Hindu Succession Act, where daughters were not given equal rights in ancestral property till the year 2005. So, what would happen is UCC would eliminate all these disparities and ensure equal rights across the board, irrespective of religion and gender. So, I would say it would be a huge step forward rather than backwards.
That's a very powerful argument. Speaking of implementation, where do you think we stand today? Are we moving closer to a nationwide implementation?
Well, nationwide, we are still at very early stages, but states are now starting to take the initiative. Goa, of course, is often cited as a model because it had a civil code since Portuguese rule, which applied uniformly to all its citizens except in some exceptional cases. Now, Uttarakhand in 2024 passed the UCC bill, which is a very significant milestone because that bill mandates equal inheritance rights, registration of live-in relationships, bans polygamy and triple talaq, and makes marriage registration compulsory, to mention a few aspects. So I would say that people in Uttarakhand have accepted it, and it's a very big step. And I don't see why other states should also not be equally progressive. There are states like Gujarat and Assam that have expressed similar intentions, and it appears that India will sooner or later see a very phased state-led approach before any national legislation is passed.
Absolutely, ma'am. Can you highlight a few judgments where the Supreme Court has discussed this issue?
Certainly. Now, let us see where the Supreme Court has in their comments, or even in not only in their comments and passing, but even in the judgments, indicated the right for a uniform civil code. The first I would say is that 1985 case, which is Muhammad Ahmad Khan versus Shah Bano, where the Supreme Court upheld maintenance rights for Muslim women and called Article 44, that is the Directive Principle, a dead letter, urging the government to implement UCC. So this was, I think, one of the first cases where it was very vehemently advocated by the judges of the Supreme Court that we should have a uniform civil code. Then in 1995, there was this case Sarla Mudgal versus Union of India, where it ruled that a Hindu man cannot convert to Islam just to practice bigamy. This judgment again reaffirmed the constitutional need for UCC. Recently, not very recently, but in 2001, you had this Daniel Latifi case, which is Daniel Latifi versus Union of India, which extended maintenance rights to Muslim women beyond the Iddat period. These cases show how the court has been trying to protect the rights of litigants who have approached it, even in the absence of UCC. It also shows that gradually, over a period of time, the Supreme Court has urged time and again that the legislature should come up with a uniform civil code.
All right, ma'am. Before we wrap up, I have a final question for you. In your opinion, if India wants to implement UCC, what's the best way forward?
Well, yes, you know how what a big population we have, 1.4 billion and still counting. Anything that has to be done in a country which has such a huge population obviously has to be very gradual. And apart from gradual and doing everything in a phased manner, there is also a requirement for dialogue. When I say dialogue, I mean people should be educated. Most of the opposition is generally from people of the opposite political party, which is not in power, and all they try to do is create a huge uproar when there is really no requirement. I feel that there should be dialogue, in the sense that there should be platforms which can educate people as to how UCC will help them in the long run. our effort in this podcast is one of the ways of actually making people understand that UCC is good and that there is a constitutional safeguard in this particular UCC, and we should have it. And also, minorities cannot fear that their rights will be overridden. How will it be overridden? It will be one common law that applies to everybody, whether you're from a minority religious sect or from a majority, nothing should matter. Everybody will be treated equally under the law. And finally, Yash, I think the successful models like Goa and Uttarakhand should actually help in opening up the eyes of the citizens of India, who should be welcoming this particular UCC rather than advocating against it.
Thank
Say
you
it
so
again.
much, ma'am.
Uh,
Such an insightful and balanced view on this topic. And thank you, viewers, for joining in today. We'll be back with another episode on the Indian Lawyer Legal Tips. Stay tuned.
I would like to just add over here, dear viewers, UCC is something that needs to be spread across different parts of the country, and it would be really great if viewers can share this particular episode, because all these episodes that we are making are actually part of a social cause. And if you help us to spread the word and get a better outreach, it would help everybody in the long run. Thank you, and till we see each other in the next episode. Goodbye, and see you soon.